And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tectonic Lounge. Today, we're joined by Ken, who is the founder of TaskBeasts, a very unique outsourcing startup. We'll just say it at that. How's it going, Ken?
Hey, good. Hi, everyone.
So, Ken lives in Southeast Asia. We met years and years ago in Ho Chi Minh City. Ken has hopped around the world with his lovely wife and family. Ken, kind of tell us more about what is TaskBeasts and what other stuff have you gotten yourself into?
Yeah, so task-based is an approach to offshoring that kind of leverages how I've worked for the last 4 years with freelancers. And it's the whole idea of plug and play freelancers. So, like, the idea is like you can scale your company without having to hire full time. And, it's this frictionless or small friction way of working with these freelance folks. A little bit about me. I was born in America, did strategy consulting for a while when it was a cool thing to do. Hopped over into corporate when it was the '08 crisis and I was stuck in Russia at the time. And then I've been in tech for about the last 7 years. I was in Lazada during its early years, and that's how I met Serge in Vietnam. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been kind of like contracting, running my own agency and plugging in freelancers into these clients that I've had, which have generally been like tech companies that have been scaling pretty quickly, usually like seed or series A or B, kind of that's,
So
yeah.
this piggybacks well, and we can jump into our primary topic of conversation today. In general, when you're building a startup, when you're building a company and you get funding, you realize you need people, right? You need to, there's ladders of prioritization of who you need to hire. And often hiring full-time staff will let you burn that cash really fast. While as a founder, I've experienced myself that it's very hard to get ideas out of your head. So you only need people for a very particular set of tasks. So this fractional task-based approach is what you're kind of capitalizing on, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like what I've consistently found, and done a number of startups myself, is that you want good specialists. But when you're early on, like you don't need them full time, right? So what the trade off some people make is they just get these generalists and have them full time, and then like they're bad at everything. So like we believe, hey, we're going to get you specialists, but they're going to be fractional. It's going to cost, it's going to end up costing the same or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a time to when you get big enough as an organization that you need generalists to be able to kind of manage the process and create better systems. But when you're starting up, you need very particular tasks accomplished. And so what I've seen TaskBeasts do is allow you to say, hey, I need very particular tasks done. Do you have specialists? So give us some real life example of how that would work. With task definition, you talk about your system a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I have a client I've been working with for a while now. I'm kind of acting as like a fractional manager there, helping them with tech and operations and things. We've brought in at least 20 people over the last 4 or 5 months to do a variety of things. So we're building them a marketplace using Bubble right now. So we've got 3 Bubble devs, a designer, QA. And the designer is a good example where like we were first designing and then getting feedback and iterating on that for a couple months. So we were pretty intensively using a couple different designers. And now like there's very little design, only when we got to change something. So like if we had hired someone full time, we'd be paying this designer full time to twiddle their thumbs, or we'd find work to do for them, but like it wouldn't be what is a priority. So this is consistently what we find. And now freelancers there are doing BI. We've got 3 SDR sales reps. We've got someone running their YouTube channel, 2 people running SEO content, people doing operations. So like across the board, basically in every single department, we've got people, and it's a very flexible, low cost way of them kind of scaling what they need.
And of course, everybody spends hours and hours at a time in meetings to do this, right?
No, yeah. So that's the other thing that's unique about us is I switched to like I was working remote on a remote first company ever since 2021, and I was using ClickUp, and we had started developing these systems, and I took them like, so we were remote, very few meetings because we were spread across many different time zones, people in the US, Europe, Asia. There's just very little time to overlap. And so we developed these systems where we didn't, everything could more or less be done async. And to do everything on Slack would have been a mess. So we were like just structuring everything into ClickUp. And I've taken what we were doing there and just kind of like improved it, taken more extreme. So I generally run without meetings, recurring meetings at all. Like the only time someone ever needs to meet me over a call is if it's complex and we really need to discuss things. But the way that we work with these freelancers, we set them up on the system on ClickUp. We teach the client. We actually like set up the initial task for them, show them how it all works, and then you just push these tasks through different statuses. And every task is written up so that it's very clear what the output is, why we're doing it. And then the other part of the system is anytime that the freelancer does work on it, they're going to update the task, typically with a comment that says like, "Hey, I did this." And this is very useful because the clients are typically following that task, and if they're clearing their inbox in ClickUp, they're getting kind of each incremental improvement that is done on these tasks. They're seeing it, more or less real time.
Yeah, and I think it's a powerful thing because I think everybody would complain about the amount of time that we spend in meetings and how much that eats away at things. And I think that this powerful ability to work asynchronously, and again, we've all dealt with or heard of, distributed teams. I worked in a project where I think PM was in Spain, the owner of the project was in Germany, somebody was in Hawaii, somebody was in central US, and then our development team was in Vietnam. And so all of a sudden you're dealing with, okay, what time zone can we meet in? And I think as long as you set up that system, right, and we can talk more about the thought process of setting up the system, but in general, clearly defined tasks. And I think you would agree that you need to break the task down to small chewable bites. So it's not a
Yeah.
giant 2 week long task. It's smaller tasks that are, 1 day tasks, 2 day tasks. What is the average time frame for a task completion in your system?
So I think it really depends on the task type. Like a YouTube video, from the time you come out, they're coming up with a script and they're creating a draft and whatnot. Like it can easily take a week or
Sure.
two. Design tasks typically go like a turnaround 3 to 4 days. Development tasks, we do them bite size. So development is the one area where we often do like a like a 10-minute stand up every day. But everybody's prepared for that by making their updates to the task before. But like generally, like a development task will be done within a week, so that we can more or less chunk things down into things that can be delivered.
Very
So
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, the fact that people come prepared. I mean, many meetings I've been to, we spend half the meeting updating. Hey, what did you do yesterday? What did you work on last week? What are you working on today? If your task's already done and ClickUp, then perhaps you don't need to spend that time, to essentially repeat what was already in on the board.
yeah, I think that's so massive, and like I forget what it was like to write these updates. But like when I was in product and I had some tech leadership roles where I was a product person, I would write the same thing like multiple times, like all the time. Like preparing updates for this meeting, that meeting. You know, I don't think I've written an update in that way, like in a document, in 3 years. Like literally, I haven't written one. I forgot how to do it because everything that we do is in these tasks, and whoever needs to be in the know, like you just tag them as a follower, and everybody has a responsibility of clearing their own tasks, so they should be up
And
on
I
what's.
think today you can even do updates, not necessarily do text-based ones, but you can use Loom or other video tools to say, "Hey, here's a quick update where we are on this task," so on and so forth. And I think that it gives you a variety of options. So, just to kind of zoom back out, if you're a startup, let's just say you're a startup in Wichita, Kansas, right? You have several options how you can do things. You can definitely hire local staff and build an office, not even talking about paying rent and all the US tax things and medical insurance and all the other stuff, but also finding very specific specialists and hiring, even with the part-time responsibility. There's a lot of oversight and management that you have to deal with. You could outsource the entire thing, and sometimes you'll find a really good company like Code Engine Studio that will do really good development for you, but then not necessarily experts in content creation or YouTube videos or whatever else. So you still have to find supplemental stuff to deal with. And it takes up your time as, product founder or whatever it is to manage all these separate pieces, especially when you're dealing with teams. Or you can say, hey, when I have a need, I find somebody and I deal with it at a period of time. How does that transition as you grow? Do you still feel like you can then bring in full-time people And in what particular roles would you bring full-time people in and then still supplement them with fractional?
So I think once for more strategic positions, like the person's running your GTM overall strategy, and that's like a big thing. Like you should eventually have someone that's in the company and fully has the right incentives, and it takes a long term view, right? Like you cannot force a long term view on a freelancer. Like I've learned that many times. One other thing I just mentioned, because one thing that we don't like, our whole motto is like you can outsource everything, but I think the only asterisk and the thing that we exclude is we don't really do coded development. We do no code like Bubble,
Right.
so we'll do prototypes, but like there's so many people that are really good at like code, and I was in that world, and I know like what it takes to be good. So we don't really play there, but we'll basically everything else is kind of where we play, and so I think we're a good way to start any function as you're trying to figure out what departments you need. Like you just start with us, and you really only need the founders and us, and you can do almost anything. And then once you find that, okay, like I need a strategic person owning this area, and we've grown to the point where that's going to be like a full time thing, then you bring them on, and we'll work with that person. And then if eventually you don't need us, you just let us. We stop working with you on that department.
And I love the fact that it gives you the agility and this whole idea of, hey, let's try this small thing. Let's throw this at the wall and see if it sticks, right? I mean, we always talk about finding a beachhead market and stuff like that. Well, you're early on, you should be trying stuff, right? You're still exploring your market. You're still trying to explore your, product market fit. You're trying to find your ideal customer profiles, all these things you're trying to do in the early parts of the startup. And you may think you know them, but obviously they're going to evolve and so will the market. But if you don't have a commitment to a full-time team, like let's say you were going to go B2C and then you realized, oh no, we actually got to switch to a B2B strategy and all this other stuff. And I hired all these full-time B2C specialists. Now I either have to retrain them or have to expand and have two separate products, and that becomes its own headache. So I think I love
Yeah,
the idea of you being able to experiment.
yeah. Two that brings to mind two stories. One is one thing that we do is we've set up growth teams as a way of like selling our services a couple times. And we use ClickUp, and we set up different. The whole idea of growth teams is like usually the company has one GTM channel that's working, but they want to diversify, and they like, maybe they want to try YouTube, they want to try cold calling, they want to, do other things. They want to buy lists and try to cold email them. So we know we have people that know how to do all these things, and we'll just like run the process to think through what do I want to try, and then we'll put the people in place, and they run these small experiments, and we'll kind of like manage that whole process for them. And having done that a number of times, like I can tell you, most things don't work. So if you went, you hired a bunch of people to do it, like you'd be wasting a whole bunch of money than having to let them go, and it's also bad for them. One other thing I'd say is like I've been in a client 2 years ago that was a scaling startup, raised a pretty good seed round, and they thought that their model was working, and they had hired people in 4 or 5 different countries, and the model was only really working well in one country. And I was kind of like of the opinion like, hey, we don't need full time, like let's just go freelance. But they wanted people to run the market, and then like they couldn't raise because the whole like fundraising market dropped, and they had something that was working in one country and could have scaled, but instead they had to close the entire business because they had hired 10 employees in like 3 other markets, right? And it was just like a classic example. Like if they didn't have that burn, they could have survived.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing when that runway gets really short when you're burning it fast. So let's kind of look at the other side of it. There's obviously platforms out there like Elance, Upwork, Fiverr, and a few others that would let you just hire freelancers. What's the advantage of a managed platform like what you guys are doing, and even using a system that you build inside a ClickUp over just randomly hiring a bunch of folks?
So I think it depends on like how good you want to be good at managing this. You could potentially set up all the systems and do everything the way I do, right? But you'd have to remember like I've managed probably over 200 people in the last 4 years using these systems and making it better and better and better. But I was hiring people from Upwork and Fiverr initially, right? Now we hire from some other places as well. But like what I kept running into the same problems. Like, oh, some people are good, some people are not. Like some people are very transparent and they respond quickly. Some people don't. And like, how do you like the thing that I consistently hear with people that, are hiring Upwork just sometimes is like, oh, wow, like it's so unreliable. Like, I cannot give them anything I truly need because I have no idea like if it's going to be delivered well. So we try to take that whole risk out, and we leverage the fact that we've managed hundreds of these people and try to create a system that, all right, we're going to vet people. We're going to figure out who's good. We're going to have them all work in the same way. So it's going to be very transparent to you. Like, you don't have to wonder, okay, when is this guy going to deliver it? Next week, or am I going to get it tomorrow? Like, we try to give it the way that you would expect things to be delivered by an employee. We're trying to deliver you that experience with freelancers.
Yeah, I mean, having used Upwork and Fiverr, I will say the project management is very challenging because, again, I may have multiple tasks with that person, right, going, and still a chat environment. That's all you really have there. And, while you may have separate chat threads going or whatever you got, it's still much harder to deliver updates. Your concept that you shared with me and, earlier was clear the inbox, right? I think if you have that inbox of updates and ClickUp, if you've cleared your inbox, you're up to date, you've caught everybody up, you know what everybody else is doing, you can breathe out and know exactly where things are. You get that, 10,000 foot view. And I do appreciate the fact that when you have the consistency, right, whether it's a designer from this country through Upwork, or whether it's a person that's worked with you before, or you might have different people working on the same task, right? You may be sharing a task between multiple people, and then they might be coming different systems, and then there's no missed messaging or communication. So having that platform together will, I think, make everybody's life easier. All right. So, of course, go ahead. Go ahead.
One last point I want to make is like when you look at how a lot of offshoring companies work, the first thing they say is, "Oh, I have like all these recruiters in the market, and I try to find the best people," and they all like to brag, like, "I interviewed 1,000 people and I hired five," right? And like what I figured out, and I've been working for a long time with these Upworkers and with different freelancers, like I am often wrong about the interview, like whereas what I've been doing for 4 years now is if I need something and I know that it's hard, I'll hire three people for a limited scope and vet who's the best one. And so we've done this so many times in different niches that like we now have a pretty good list of people that we've already worked with, like in some capacity. And that saves so much heartache, right? If you hire one person and it's the wrong person, like you've just wasted a whole bunch of time and money. So yeah, that's the other.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not as concerned about meetings, you're not as concerned about them fitting in culturally into your office space, or making sure they support your vision and mission, and all the other stuff, which I think is all wonderful as you grow and become a bigger company, and you need to build a team that relies on each other. But I think if you're just trying to get stuff done as a startup and you don't worry about those things, then you take away the risk of being not perfect in your interviewing process, because I think we've all had experience where we interviewed one person, but a different one showed up to the office. And in the
Yeah.
work environment, people can dress up really well. But then they say the old paradigm is, be slow to hire and fast to fire. And I think being able to do things both fast, right? You can quickly fill a gap, try different people, bring them on. So you're slow to hire full time, but you're fast to hire, fill a need. And then if you don't feel the person's working out, if the tasks are not being delivered, you don't have to go through the process of performance reviews and all these other things. It is clearly being delivered. So I think you're saving yourself hours of interviewing time. You're saving yourself hours of performance reviews and management time. And again, as you get bigger, some of that may be useful, but as a startup, you got to fight uphill on so many other things. To me, that's the last thing you want to waste time on.
Yeah, exactly. And I like, I've worked in some larger companies, and the entire recruiting, bringing them on board, waiting them to leave whatever company they were at and start and get up to speed. Like you're often talking 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
Like our average time is 24 to 48 hours. You're like, I'm talking like from the time we meet, you tell us what you need, we bring them on board. Like they're already like working on a task, usually within around 24 hours. So it just like brings a completely different pace. And then, you know, the only things you really need full time are like, all right, like I've been doing this function for 3 to 6 months. It is working. I'm sure that this team is needed and is going to
Yep.
stay. And then, you like find a full time person.
Yeah, and you can even slowly transition as find and pass on knowledge and all this other stuff. All right, so we can't live in 2024 without asking the scary question about our favorite topic, which is AI. The absurd comment would be to say, well, sooner or later AI will take care of all of this. Um, How do you leverage AI, or what is you feel is the shortcoming of an AI system or even AI driven process in what you're doing?
So I would say, like in the US, especially where I'm from, everyone's worried about AI. And but what I see happening in reality is things are first moving offshore. I think there's this massive erosion of white collar jobs that is happening right now, and it is not happening to AI. It is happening to places like Philippines and Pakistan because I know some of these offshore companies. I see their growth rates, and I'm just like, wow, like America's getting emptied out. So and the way that a lot of them are positioning themselves is that they're getting pretty good at this AI, and so you're not just offshoring to them, you're offshoring and taking advantage of their knowledge of how best to use AI and like how they've used it in other clients. So this is something that we're developing. We've got like a set of AI services, an initial set that we know how to do, and we know the value that it adds, and you can purchase those services. That's kind of the only thing that we're doing right now. And my partner is like deep in the AI world ever since a couple 3 or 4 years, even before it became sexy. So he's kind of staying on top and testing new tools. And so part of the value we try to bring is we understand what's the right tool and like where does it actually add value as opposed to it's just like a nice ad.
Yeah, I think value is the underlying part of this entire equation. Is can you deliver value to the customers with the least amount of effort? Can you get the most value at a, I would say, rapid deployment, right? Sometimes you need just rapidly deploy a task and solve a problem instead of having to wait to hire someone. So would you say most of the people who are hiring your folks are coming from North America, or is that becoming more globalized as companies around the world are doing stuff?
So I would say because I'm in Southeast Asia and most of my network is here, most of our current client base is actually in Asia. So like they've got access and that shows you kind of where the value prop is too. Like we haven't done a big price arbitrage value prop because till now, like not, we've had a couple clients in the past in the US. This was actually before TaskBeasts. Like most all the TaskBeasts current clients are in Asia in some part. But they're using TaskBeasts not because we can get them much cheaper. They're using TaskBeasts because they just find this process very flexible and it makes their lives easy and allows them to scale.
Yeah, valuable, right? We're talking about bringing value. The process is valuable, and the process removes headaches. I think it's. I'm a big believer in systems and stuff like that. So, last question I'll ask you is: you have a whole variety of skill sets that you offer through TaskBeasts. You have people in marketing, content creation, no code programmers, so on and so forth. What do you feel is the next task skill set that's coming down the road that you guys don't have that you're seeing the growth and demand in?
So I would say I don't think it's like a new trend, but I would say that we don't get this type of work currently very often, but others do. Like I'm aware of a company called Growth Assistant, and so they do generally like marketing assistants, and they're like well trained on paid and organic marketing methods. And so for that, like you're often so this isn't something that we've really played in before. Like usually they have their own people, at least the clients we've had. But I think that is a growing demand. Like more and more companies have figured out, like, hey, I don't need my own. Maybe I just need like a head of marketing, and he can use a completely outsourced team. So that I'm seeing more and more companies that are like, be like, yeah, I don't need all these full time marketing people. Like, I'll just use these companies that specialize in this.
All right. Well, Ken, is there anything else you want to add to the kind of always give a last word to our guests? Anything you want to share, not necessarily about our topic, but about your company or any vision for the world kind of stuff?
Yeah, I like last thing I would say is one thing I've seen going down this rabbit hole of this very async way of working is I've observed less conflict and more happiness in my teams than I've ever seen in my entire career. Right. And so there's this like belief that, the more remote, the more async, the less personal, like the more, you know, people don't like working. And like I've just seen the exact opposite happen in part because like human nature is like people are going to have people they like and people they don't like, and This way of working just like allows you to focus on work, right? And you like it puts a process where you're helping each other. So that's what I'm really bullish on. Like I just think that yeah, the traditional workplace has a lot of dysfunctional things, and this style of working is something that like if you try it, you'll really be surprised.
So no office politics, no water cooler talk, not as many, discussions of the latest Bachelor episodes or last night's baseball game or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I've done some leadership roles in the past, and like, man, I was going home like at various points, like always thinking about some political stress. And like, the reason I look so happy right now is like, I haven't dealt with any politics in over 3 years. Like, I just don't have to, and I don't want to, and I love that. So,
All right, words to live by. Be happy, don't deal with politics. I think we can make a T-shirt and sell that, especially this election year in the United States. Thank you, everybody, for listening. The link to TaskBeasts will be on the show notes. We want to thank Ken again for joining us. Folks, tune in next time for another exciting episode where we look at technology solutions for real life business problems. This was a great one to help folks who start businesses, outsource, and create fractional results, with a lot less effort than hiring staff. Thank you once again, Ken.
thanks.